All right, so let's talk a little bit about the concept of database marketers using direct marketing tactics and why it is important to test your direct marketing tactics to determine whether or not they are the most effective and efficient way to market your products. Should be noted that every good database marketer does testing. And so we're going to talk a little today about testing and how to do the testing, and once again then try to explain to you why it is so important. Many direct marketers don't test, but every good database marketer does. It's all about the old story of good, better, and best. It's all about continuous improvement, always trying to get better. All businesses are trying to get better. They're trying to become more effective and efficient marketers. They are trying to increase profits. They are trying to increase sales, and they are trying to increase retention of customers. The thing about database marketers is that they have the data to evaluate every marketing offer they make to determine how successful it was, and then they can use that data to make changes to increase the response rates and profits of their marketing offers. I have a couple of quotes here that remind me of all of that. One is I used to have I played college football, and our head coach when I first started playing college football was a guy who had been coaching football since the 1950s. And I remember we had our first game against a nationally ranked team, and I had played on a state championship high school football team in Illinois. And we got ready for that week before our very first game, and there was no scouting report. And I'd been at a high school who had, we used to have sometimes 2 or 3 different scouting reports from 2 or 3 different sources, even when I was in high school. And so we said to John, "Hey, John, where's the scouting report?" And John would looked at us and he said, "We don't need a scouting report." He said, "We'll scout them in the first half and we'll beat them in the second half." And a couple of us sort of looked at him and thought, well, he's been coaching for a long time. Maybe he knows what he's doing. And we're 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. Well, we played the first half of the game, and we got the absolute stuffings beat out of us. As I recall, it was 22-0 at half, and they had just beat the living stuffings and everything else out of us. And we walked into the locker room, and I was playing with I was an offensive tackle, and the person who played next to me was a guard by the name of Ray Wirtz. And Ray looked at me, and I looked at Ray, and Ray looked at me, and Ray said to me, he said, "I sure hope that John got a good scout in the first half," he said, "because they are absolutely hammering us." Turned out that John did not get that good a scout. I think maybe we lost the game 28-6, and it was a little bit of a moral victory to get a couple of field goals out of the other team. There's also the other famous line, "Don't confuse me with the facts. My mind is made up." Can't run a business that way anymore. There used to be times when you could run a business sort of intuitively, and even guys like the old time successful businessmen, they used to do some things sort of by principles and intuition. But today, to be successful in business today, you have to have the facts and the data in front of you, and you have to make data-driven marketing decisions. And then, of course, there's a famous line from Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and then also redone again in Blazing Saddles, where the guys are pinned down at the border, and the banditos have them pinned down, and so the banditos say to Humphrey Bogart and his group of people, they say, "Put down your guns. We're the federales. Come out. We want to talk to you." And of course, Humphrey Bogart yells back at them, "If you're the federales, show us your badges." And they look at each other a little bit, and they yell back to Humphrey Bogart, "Badges? We don't need no stinking badges." And they start shooting at each other. And of course, that's what this goes. It goes, "Numbers? We don't need no stinking numbers." And so the fact is that database marketers have the ability and have the data to evaluate every offer. And they need to evaluate every offer. And they also need to do what? They need to test the offer that they are currently using against other ways that they might make the same offer or a comparable offer to see which one is more successful. So what is testing? Well, testing is all about what happens if I do this. So testing might be comparing pre and post. That is, what happens before I did this versus after I did this. So it could be, well, what happens after I put in a money-back guarantee compared to without a money-back guarantee? Or it could be a control versus experimental condition. That is, the current way I'm doing things and a new way that I might be doing things. And to see which one of those gives me more responses, more profits, and more revenues. Or it could be comparing alternatives. You know, alternative A versus B versus C. Which one is creates the most profit? Which one creates the most revenue? Which one creates the most retention? Which one creates the most leads? All those sorts of kinds of questions. So testing is all about looking at what I'm doing currently and seeing if I can improve on what we are currently doing. You know, so maybe your company is like Dick's Sporting Goods, and Dick's Sporting Goods sends out email blasts once or twice a week, and every time they talk about, oh, this week's great deals, and of course they're not great deals, and it's an email blast, and it's not, you know, and so it's just an email blast. Well, what they could do is they could go in now and start to do targeted emails to individual customers based on their previous purchasing, and then they could compare a group of people who get the email blast to the people who get targeted emails and see what the differences are. That's the sort of thing that you do when you're testing. So what is it that we can test? Well, if you go back and remember the famous notion of direct marketing basics, we always say, you know, what is it that affects success in direct marketing? Well, the first one is what? Is the offer, right? So the offer impacts this. So we can compare one offer to another offer. Because, you know, direct marketers are always trying to, and database marketers, always trying to get you to respond to an offer by creating an offer that you think is worth exchanging money for whatever the product offer is. The idea, of course, is that we want to get as much revenue as we can from you for offers that cost us the least. But if we make a crummy offer like, for instance, Dick's Sporting Goods does every week, well, then your sales don't go very high. So we can compare offers. The second thing we can do is we can compare the packaging, the presentation, or the message. And, you know, in modern marketing, this is, like I said before, this is as simple as simply testing to see what kind of a headline creates more email opens. And then what kind of text in the email, the first 3 lines of text, create the lowest bounce rates, those sorts of things. So it's the packaging, it's the presentation, it's the message. You know, I think I told you this before as an example. One of the things that infomercial people have found is that people who do infomercials with a British accent will almost always outsell those people who do not have a British accent. Now there are some, you know, examples of when that doesn't happen, you know, and you know, there are some U.S. based pitch men in the and pitch women in the infomercial business, but once again, you can test the pitch people against each other. And then finally, it's who's the target audience, who's the database that we're using, which people in the database are we targeting, how are we deciding who to mail the offer to, or who to directly make the offer to. So some of the options are different offers, timing of offers, different pitches, different mediums, different cosmetics, different customer groups. And so I have a little chart here. These are some of the things that we can test. We could test even others, but good database marketers are always testing something. So why test? Remember we said originally, why test? Well, it's all about continuous improvement, right? Good to better to best. Well, direct marketers will tell you, here's why we test. We test to learn what works. That is, have some proof of what works. And of course, what works best. We might test because we need benchmarks. That is, we need to know what the benchmark is, and then we try to come up with ways to beat that benchmark. Another reason that we test is that things change. Things that were working great now might not work that great a year from now. Things change, things happen. Think about pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. Once again, back to the notion of continuous improvement, good to better to best. We might test to help justify our decisions. Here's why we're doing it. Because when we do it this way, we don't get as many responses as when we do it that way. And then we also test just to provide us with data and feedback and information about how sensitive response rates are to things like timing or offers or messaging or mediums or whatever else it might be. One of the key notions in testing is setting up a control group. All right, control test groups. And of course, the idea here is to make sure that you have random assignment to testing groups. And you say to yourself, well, that won't be hard, but it turns out it's harder than you first appear. We one time did we were doing a marketing campaign, and we wanted to randomly assign people to the two conditions. And so we just took the list and we broke it in half. We had, 9,000 names. Well, we took the first 4,500 names, put them in one group, took the 4,500 names, put them in a second group, and then mailed the offer to them. Well, it turns out that that's not a random assignment. And the reason that that's not a random assignment is it turns out that people from particular cultures and particular races and ethnicities are more likely to have names that are in the beginning of the alphabet versus the back of the alphabet. And so when you just split the list in half, it turns out you don't get an even distribution. What would have been the smart thing for us to do was to simply alphabetize the names and then take every other name. First name A, second name B. All the odd names are A's, all the even names are B's. And then go in and run the test that way. The goal is to create an unbiased test where we actually don't have to worry about things like a biased sample as we evaluate the results. Typical testing steps. Testing steps include determine what the objectives are. And this is really crucial because every direct marketing offer potentially has a different set of objectives. Sometimes the objectives is to get people to try our product. Therefore, we're not as interested in profits from the offer as we are on conversions. So it could be determine the objectives. Is it profitability? Is it responses? Is it new customers? What is it that the objective is? Second, develop a controlled test experiment design. Determine the appropriate metrics of success, incremental profits, sales, retention, whatever it might be. Calculate the cost, carry out the marketing program. Of course, then we need to measure the results, determine the successfulness of the test based on the objectives, and then go in and test some more. So we test A against B and we find out what's better, A or B. We're not done. Now we have to do what? Now we got to take the winner of the A-B test and we have to, next time we direct market, we need to test the winner against C, or maybe the winner against C and D. And then we continually test to see if we can find something a little bit better to continuously improve. That's the notion of testing. testing. And that's the goal of testing, is to constantly get better at what we're doing.